I've been in the descent for the last 30 years. Pretty good to keep descending, I'm waiting to figure out what the bottom is, but we're on the slow descent. But I'm at the absolute height, 1991. I'm anchoring a new show on Channel 4, Weekend Today in New York. And they said, we'd like you to profile interesting New Yorkers. And I thought, I think I know some interesting New Yorkers. But then I asked a group of my friends, who's an interesting New Yorker? And then my friend Sue Bohm, who I wish was here, said, I have the perfect interesting New Yorker for you. His name is Richard Osterweil. He crashes parties. He's an intruder into high society. He drives a taxi. He checks codes at Café des Artistes. And throughout the night, after he does all that, he paints the most amazing paintings. Whimsical, beautiful, clever, gorgeous. I mean, your paintings are all over the place. I mean, they are so different, each one. How many paintings do you have, Richard? 2,000. 2,000. So how can I summarize what 2,000 paintings are like? So it's 1991, and this fabulous documentary is coming out then, and I see the documentary, and I interview Richard, and I can't even begin to cover him correctly on TV news because he's such a one-of-a-kind. And I never continued the series on interesting New Yorkers because I knew I couldn't top the first New Yorker I interviewed. So interesting. At that time, right after the movie, he hosted 1,000 people at the Russian mission. No one at that time goes to the Russian mission, but he was hosting a party at the Russian mission. And I remembered interviewing Richard at the time and said, how do you top this? 1,000 people at the Russian mission. And he goes, well, it's Tuesday night. Saturday, I'll be back at Café des Artistes checking coats. So, as we all know, Richard loves the dichotomy of his life. Way up there, and now he's like the chair of all these ballet gala boards, and but he also likes to be, driving a taxi and checking coats. My husband and I loved his work so much when we saw the movie and met him that our apartment in Brooklyn Heights is a mini Richard Osterweil gallery. When you see the documentary, you'll see that there's a beautiful portrait in the style of Canaletto of Venice, and it's Judy Peabody Goes to Venice. And we saw it, and we said, we would love to have that portrait, that painting. And Richard said, only if I could have visitation rights. So he has visitation rights, and we're happy to have him all the time come and see the painting. He accuses us of overpaying for it. We bought it on a time installment plan, and he said, you're paying too much money for it. You cannot pay too much money for a Richard Osterweil painting because they're all so unique and different. We have 4 different paintings. One is the Russian royal family out for a picnic sometime before they're executed. How many months, maybe years. And the Tsar is playing footsie with his mistress on one side, and the other side is his wife. It's taken from a portrait, and from a photograph, and we just love that that's Richard's take on the Russian royal family. We also have Vladimir Nabokov with Lolita-style glasses, and we also have the girl with the pearl earring in a mosaic style, and we need more. And our daughters have Richard Osterweil paintings. Everyone just loves a Richard Osterweil painting. And I'm only going to tell one other Richard Osterweil story. So I'm at Channel 4, everything's going fine. Then I switch stations to Channel 2, and everything's sort of going all right there. And they say at one point, oh, we want you to do a story on men who are having plastic surgery, liposuction on their love handles. And I'm thinking, how am I going to do that? So I call my favorite plastic surgeon, who's not my personal plastic surgeon, but he's a good TV plastic surgeon, Dr. John Sherman. I said, I've been given this assignment to do men who are having lipo on their love handles. And he goes, I have the perfect person who will go on camera and do it. And I show up, and who is it but Richard Osterweil in his underwear, in the story. And I've got a surgical mask on, thank goodness, because because I'm laughing so hard, because I didn't work this out that it was going to be someone I knew, because I'd get in trouble if I only had my friends he was getting free lipo in exchange for a portrait. He was giving the plastic surgeon a portrait of Leona Helmsley, of all people. So that is the Richard we all know and love. And so now we want to introduce the legend himself, Richard Osterweil.
Thank you very much, McGee. What she neglected to tell you in the plastic surgery story is that I thought I was completely out of it. But on TV the next week, I was saying, well, McGee, you know, I felt worse in my life, having a whole conversation. I thought I was completely dead to the world. So, and it didn't take that much out. I wasn't fat, but it was very nice. It was a lovely thing to do. All right. Welcome, everybody, to come to see Painting the Town. I'm going to begin with the same quote I used introducing the movie in 1992 at the premiere at Lincoln Center, courtesy of my good friend, Gracie Allen. I would rather be here with all of you than with the best people. There are a lot of people here tonight who were actually at the premiere in 1992, maybe 20. There are a lot of people who I wish were here. My parents, my grandmother, and my great friend Judy Peabody. But I'll make do with what I've got. This isn't going to be very long. I was told that I should probably cut and paste. But I said, I am like the lilies of the field. I cut not, nor do I paste. So I don't think it will be boring. But at a certain point I'm going to say, you want to hear this story? Just say no. I don't care. I'm sorry. Okay. This is the first time that Painting the Town has been shown on a big screen since the early 1990s. I wanted it to be seen in a communal way. Usually we see movies in a large theater with strangers or on a small screen at home. This is an expanded version of the movie nights I have hosted in my apartment since before the pandemic and shall perhaps do again. A communal viewing by like-minded people. I always think of the movie Cinema Paradiso, where movies were shown on a wall of an Italian town with the entire village watching on the wall at night outside. Why now? Well, turning 70 is a really big deal. For me, it's a passage from one era of life to the next, but somehow more significant than other passages. I don't know why, but it is. 60 doesn't bother me. It's not that it bothers me, but it's significant. I had hoped to be able to manage a coup de vieux. That's French for a sudden overnight aging, but this is a good alternative. I wanted to see how the movie held up and how I held up too. How did Painting the Town come about? Throughout the 80s, people who knew of my adventures wanted to document them. But I wasn't interested. I preferred to live my life rather than depict it. Then my upstairs neighbors at 33 Bleecker Street, Andy Behar and Sarah Sackner, came to me and said, we made some money this year. We could either buy a BMW or make a movie about you. How do I turn that down? Now, Painting the Town was filmed over a long Memorial Day weekend in 1991. The budget was about $60,000. There was no script at all, just me being prompted to tell stories the filmmakers knew quite well. I told them it sounded like such a boring idea. Who would want to hear me gab for over an hour? They said, just let us put it together. And they did. Editing is everything. And no one was more surprised than I by the result. When I first saw it, my first thought was, you know, Richard, you really aren't like other people. Surprise. Okay. Oh, good. Patricia, who runs this place, is laughing. This is good news. This is good news. If I can get Patricia to laugh, this is good. Okay. We're long friends. I used to be a fake member of the DGA. I went to Okay. Andy and Sarah could not be here tonight, but they have sent a representative. Their youngest son, Albert, who is now a 6'4", noted composer and soon to be a father. At 6 weeks old, He was in his bassinet during the filming and very quiet and held the entire production together. Albert, please just stand up for a minute. We also have Hamid Shams, who's the cinematographer, and Amy Burton, the musical star of the evening. She had to learn some music for the production, and it's beautiful. And they're both here, which I'm very pleased about too. The production was so low budget that the cinematographer, Hamid, doubled as the makeup artist. The director, Andy, doubled as the caterer. And the producer, Sarah, doubled as the wet nurse. As for wardrobe, take a good look at this shirt. You're going to see it again tonight. And it wasn't new in 1991. And in fact, it's part of a taxi shirt series. When I was driving, I found these beautiful shirts for $15 on Canal Street. So every weekend, I would work an extra hour, hour and a half, and the next Monday I'd buy the shirt. And I built up a whole collection. But the shirt is trying to tell me something, because on the subway today, it tore. So it's decided to self-retire. Unless I wear it as a smock over something. We'll just see. Okay. Painting the Town truly commemorates my early years in New York, 1974 to 1980, when I began to look about and create myself as an artist, as an urban adventurer. The film was also somewhat historical when it came out, because it was filmed 12 years after the 80s. And speaking of history, there is enough history in this very audience to fill out another couple of volumes of Marcel Proust. It's a friendly crowd, no one cares if I have to mix up the pen. Okay. And it's not that long a speech, believe me. Painting the Town was chosen to be shown at Film Society of Lincoln Center, where it played for a week at Walter Reed Theater, getting great reviews and being picked up for distribution by Zeitgeist Films. One of the heads of Zeitgeist is here tonight. It opened in 25 cities across the country and was shown on TV through most of the 90s, though I never actually saw it on TV since I did not have cable until after 9/11. It's a story I love to tell. It's not too extensive. When I was working at Café des Artistes one day, this beautiful woman came in, and she said, she's checking her coat, she said, "I know you. I've just seen a movie about you. We're going to be showing it at Film Society in a couple of months." It was Wendy Keyes, and she said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "At the moment, I'm checking your coat." So she arranged for me, she said, "Please come, and we'll start working on publicity. Come in the middle of next week, and we'll talk about publicity." So I went, and in those days, Film Society was upstairs, which it still is, but it was an outdoor escalator that would go up to the second floor. So I'm going up the escalator, and I see Wendy coming down with Gregory Peck. And I see she goes, so of course I went down, and she said, "Hello, son, I've heard all about your movie." And I said, "Mr. Peck, I've heard about all of yours." And then Wendy put him into the taxi, and then turned around and goes, "Oh." I'll never forget it. It was a very, very exciting experience. Okay. The New York Times did a big spread with the headline, "Lock up the food, here comes Richard Osterweil." My parents were in first shock, but came to love the whole situation. I appeared on a lot of talk shows, mainly because I felt it was my job, and because I thought it was rude to turn people down. I was asked many unusual questions. One interviewer, who had read an exceptional review about me in the Washington Post, asked, "Is it true, Richard, that you are the most interesting person in New York? What do you say to this?" So I said, I will answer with the words of Queen Marie of Romania, who, when interviewed in 1912, was asked, "Queen Marie, is it true you're the most beautiful woman in Europe?" And she said, without irony, "About that I cannot say. However, I am the most beautiful queen in Europe." So I let it rest at that. What most surprised me was the fact that I was depicted as a real party creature. So very much not the case. I am not at all what one could call a fun person. I have never had fun in my life, and hope never to have to. I don't smoke or drink or take drugs. I hate music and dancing, and don't like to talk to strangers. I have danced exactly 3 times in my life voluntarily, all of them for tactical reasons, one of them involving Jackie Onassis, one of them involving Princess Grace, and one of them involving, What's that old lady from Saratoga? Robert Howard, you know who she is.
Mary Lou Whitney.
Yeah, that's the one. Got it. I knew it now. I've got reference points here. Anyway, I'm probably the only person in New York who's been to almost every club or disco about which one reads to see for myself what was happening, but who left after 20 minutes thinking of Jane Brody and her Times columns on hearing Lost due to loud music. My goodness, of someone from my wonderful past. Laura Scheuer, the great Laura Scheuer. Part of the documentary which caused perhaps the most interest was the depiction of my attending most of the best celebrity funerals and memorials in New York for decades. Richard Johnson, the king of Page Six, who is here tonight, once wrote, "If Richard hasn't been to your funeral or memorial, you're probably not really dead." Probably the nicest thing anyone's ever said about me. My two favorite lines from the movie, which people to this day quote back to me, are, "Death comes unexpectedly," and "The dead can neither confirm nor deny." You will soon see where these figure in the narrative. After the movie came out, people would always say to me at funerals, "Oh, you're here, he must really be dead." Or, "Well, how did it rate?" As you will see, this is not a morbid interest, but rather a way of observing history and passing of time by acknowledging the deaths of those who made the history. I am the ultimate observer, a bit Proust, a bit Gertrude Stein, a bit Woody Allen as Zelig. Oh, I have here to tell the Jackie O story, except I find out it's in the new excerpts that we're going to see tonight, so I'm going to skip the Jackie O story. You'll hear it later. But I have a very unusual attitude towards death, a very good one, which I call, I'm a member of the Ann Miller School of Death Acceptance. It requires a little explanation. Ann Miller, as many people here know, was this ditzy movie star of the 40s and 50s. Once they asked her, "What are you doing for Passover?" She said, "I don't do game shows." So this is not naughty, but no one should be offended by this. Ann Miller once met a friend named Patty, and she was talking to her and said, "Oh, how is Julie?" A mutual friend. "Julie is fine. She's pregnant. She's going to have a baby in a few months." "Oh, that's so wonderful. I'm so happy for her." 6 months later, she runs into Patty again and says, "Oh, Patty, how is Julie? How's the baby?" "Oh, it's very, very sad. Patty's okay, but the baby died." At which Ann Miller said, "Oh, what a shame. How terrible." "Oh, well, everyone's got to go sometime." Simple as it is, it really serves very well when you're down about something. You just think of Ann Miller. It helps. I had planned this event as a pre-funeral, but decided not to tempt fate. However, many here know that my wish is that when I do die, the cause of death, no matter what it actually may be, I wanted to say, "He just dropped dead." I owed this to a woman I worked with in the 70s in an office, a woman from Queens, and a large group of friends. And every weekend she'd come back on Monday and tell about somebody who died. And we'd always say, "But Doris, how did they?" "He just dropped dead." It's actually, I like that. I mean, it's pretty good. It means something. Okay, we're almost done, by the way. Perhaps the best thing about having a movie made about me at age 38 was having my paintings seen by many people, including on TV, perhaps by millions. Not ever having been successful professionally, it was gratifying to know that they were being seen and enjoyed by so many. My favorite comments were those in which people said the most important part of the movie was, for them, the paintings. I was at the Met a few years after it came out, and a young couple came up to me and said, "Excuse me, aren't you a famous painter?" I said, "Well, I'm famous and a painter, but not at the same time." Painting is my real life, my core, and I intend to get some done later tonight, just as I did after the premiere in 1992. The other great pleasure was getting to spread the word about the greatness of Judy Peabody. Many of you know her or knew of her. I want people to know of her existence and of her deeds. When someone at the premiere asked me, "What does Mrs. Peabody think of it?" she raised her hand and said, "She loves it." We became very close, and I was able to visit her a great deal during the years of her decline, courtesy of Sam and Elizabeth Peabody. After her death, I was asked to do a series of interviews with people who knew her, and that extended her presence for me long past her actual passing in 2010. It has been suggested that a new little thing for me to do is to lead walking tours of the Upper East Side gossip, scandal, and crime. So last year I tried it with 2 friends, and after about 20 minutes and a bock and a half, they couldn't take anymore. They were exhausted. And they are both former federal prosecutors and are here tonight. That's true. Okay. And now it's 7. Oh, I was going to tell the Met Gala story. It's pretty brief. You want to hear it? It's pretty funny.
Yes.
Everyone called me up to say, "Are you going to the Met Gala?" And I said, "I don't do these things anymore." But I went to one of the really great Met Galas. It was late 70s because Ron was not president yet, but Ron and Nancy were there. Andy Warhol was there with Paulette Goddard, Liza and Holst. It was the old days when the Met Gala was really kind of interesting and fun. And of course they didn't let me in because I was not on the list. It was even tight security then, but much tighter now. So I went downstairs to what I call the wheelchair entrance, which is where they come and they wheel people in wheelchairs. And I see a car arriving with a woman named Kitty Miller. Now, Kitty Miller was a real old bag New York socialite for about 60 or 70 years, best friend of the Duchess of Windsor. And she wasn't like a cripple, but she needed a wheelchair to get inside. So I saw them taking her out of the car, and I said, "I'll take Mrs. Miller in." And Kitty's people thought I was with the museum. The museum thought I was with Kitty. So I got her in and I wheeled her up to the ballroom upstairs. At which playtime I dumped her. I mean, I said, take care of Mrs. Miller. So they took her in, and then I just kind of wandered around, looked around. I decided, it's time to leave. I'm in, that's it. So, now many of you here know what a walker is. A walker is a guy in New York who spends his time walking socialite ladies to fashion shows and parties. I have never been a walker, but I was once a wheeler, and very proud to be so. I'm glad I told that story. I knew it would go over well. At this crowd, anyway. And now at 70, I'm thinking seriously about becoming a recluse, or as Marlene Dietrich would say, a recluse. But not quite yet. Please enjoy the movie, but feel free to leave if it's not to your taste. Everyone can't like everything. And please enjoy the feast and libations to follow. Oh, I forgot. The DGA does not allow food and drink, but you can't have everything.